Welcome in to Texans Today, everybody. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and coming up on today's show, 5 players who need to step up to make this final 53-man roster. It's going to come down to these last 2 preseason games, training camp. Can these guys show DeMeco Ryans, this coaching staff, Nick Caserio, that they deserve a spot on the final 53-man roster? Before we get into today's show, I know we've had some rough times. Lovie Smith, David Culley, Pastor Jack. It's been a rough 5-6 years for the Houston Texans pre-DeMeco Ryans and C.J. Stroud. But if you are proud to be a Texans fan right now, if you're proud to wear this gear, if you're proud to rep the first Hall of Famer, Andre Johnson, go down and hit that thumbs up icon. Like today's video if you're a proud Texans fan. I know it's been hard the past couple years, but we're here. We're ready to compete in the AFC. And if you're happy about that, if you're proud of this team and proud to be a part of this Texans team moving forward, go down and hit that like button. As we get into today's show, 5 guys who need to step up. First up, I'm going with Ben Skowronek, the wide receiver, tight end, fullback kind of hybrid guy who they traded for in the middle of the offseason from the Los Angeles Rams. Obviously, got a little bit of run last year with the Rams, 8 receptions, 66 yards, and a tutty. The 27-year-old from Notre Dame has a lot to prove, and I think he's had a pretty good camp, pretty good preseason if you ask me. But it's just this wide receiver room is so loaded. I've said it once and I'll say it again. This team has truly 3 wide receiver ones between Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell. And as you go into the next layer of this Texans wide receiver depth chart, Robert Woods, I know we all count out Robert Woods, but he's been kind of good in training camp in the preseason. John Mechie III has a really good connection with C.J. Stroud, even though I kind of want to see more out of Mechie moving forward. Noah Brown got that 1-year, $5 million deal to start free agency this year. And then Xavier Hutchinson's been balling out. Steven Sims gives you a lot in special teams in the return game. So Ben Skowronek needs to find his point. But maybe it's not as a wide receiver. Maybe it's as a fullback because he's been used a lot in, these different formations as a wide receiver, tight end, fullback. And maybe instead of Andrew Beck or Hairston, maybe they keep a guy like a Ben Skowronek instead of a fullback and use him as, that kind of mock fullback in this Texans offense. Reminder, roster cutdown day is August 27th. We'll be here on the channel. We'll be breaking down all the cuts that the Texans make that day in the final 53-man roster. But it's going to be really interesting to see how Caserio and DeMeco Ryans can figure this roster on offense this season. Because as we all know, at the beginning of last year, the Texans had a lot of problems with their offensive line depth and a lot of guys getting injured. Do they compensate for that this year with some injuries that have already happened? We've already seen Laramie Tunsil, Titus Howard that have been missing practice, missing training camp. Do they keep extra guys on the offensive line on this 53-man roster, or do they possibly keep more wide receivers? I have an interesting question for all you folks at home. How many wide receivers do you think the Texans keep on the 53-man roster this season? Do you think it's 5, 6, or 7? I don't think it's 4. There's no way they keep less than 5 guys, and there's no way they keep more than 7. So there's really only 3 options. Do you think it's 5, 6, or 7? Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section. This one might be a surprise to some people, but I'm going to go J.J. Taylor, the running back, a former New England Patriot, was on the practice squad last year, and I think he's really showed out a little bit during training camp and the preseason. I've been hearing nuggets. I continually hear J.J. Taylor's name come up whenever I talk about the running back room, whenever I talk about this Texans running back, depth chart. J.J. Taylor also in that game against the Pittsburgh Steelers played pretty well on offense, and he recovered a fumble in special teams on that punt return that that Quez Watkins muffed in that Steelers game. So he's been doing a lot to kind of prove to this coaching staff that, hey, he's not only a running back, he can help in special teams, he can help in other areas as well. But will it be enough for J.J. Taylor to make this roster? It's going to be really hard because Joe Mixon, Dameon Pierce, they're the RB1, RB2. Then you have Cam Akers, who's really just burst onto the scene and really shown a lot for this squad. So I think that's the third running back you keep. And I don't think they keep more than 4. And it really is going to come down, into my opinion, to a guy like J.J. Taylor, maybe a Jawar Jordan, who they drafted in the 6th round, and a Gumbo Wale. Who are they going to keep out of those 3 guys? I think the front runner right now could be a Gumbo Wale, because as silly as this sounds, as weird as it sounds, he is truly a glue guy because he plays every facet of special teams as well. He can help on punt. He can help on punt return. He can help on kick. He can help on kick return. He can even kick the ball if you need it. And I know it's not, obviously we have Fairbairn and we're not really going to need it, but it was huge whenever Agumbo Wale was able to come in against the Buccaneers last year and kick that field goal in that game. One of the reasons why they were able to come back and win that game. So when you have a guy who has special skills like that, it really boosts his stock on making the final 53-man roster. So a guy like J.J. Taylor is going to have to prove a ton these next couple weeks if he wants to make the final roster. Now, coming up, I have 3 defensive players who need to step up if they want to see their name on this final 53. But before I tell you about those guys, I got to tell you about our amazing sponsor, Prize Picks. It is my go-to daily fantasy sports app, and it should be your go-to daily fantasy sports app. Football season, it's back, baby. Get started with the #1 daily fantasy sports app where you turn your football knowledge into cold, hard cash. You can do weekly picks or season-long projections like I did right here. And granted, I did these picks a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, so the projections have changed just a little bit. But I'm telling you, if you get your projected picks in right now, it's going to be much better than in a couple weeks. I did more on C.J. Stroud, 26.5 passing touchdowns this year. I did more on Saquon Barkley, 1,055.5 rush yards this year. And I did more on Danielle Hunter, more than 10.75 sacks on the season. You can use my picks or, hey, go against my picks. Just make sure you do it with Prize Picks. And if you're looking for promotions, Prize Picks has you covered every week. From lowering select player stat projections on Tuesdays to help your lineup hit, or getting your fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Or you can go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use that code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. It's daily fantasy sports made easy. Now, we already had the first 2 guys on offense. Now, let's go over to the defensive side of the football. A guy who I think really needs to step up is Kurt Hinish. He was on the squad last year at defensive tackle. We've all seen the, funny clips of him and Toro messing around, messing with each other. But in all seriousness, he's got to step up if he wants to make this roster this season. I know it probably helped him out just a little bit with Danico Autry getting suspended for the first 6 games of the season, but still, they added a lot of talent in this defensive line room going into this year, and that might push Hinish to the wayside. They added a guy like Mario Edwards Jr., who is the de facto starter while Autry is out. They also added Tim Settle, who he's somebody who not a lock to make the roster. He's going to have to prove himself as well. Khalil Davis is somebody who has been on this Texans team, who the Texans coaching staff likes, but is not a lock to make this roster. And the late round pick, Marcus Harris, the 7th round pick out of Auburn, he is fighting for a roster spot as well. So really, the defensive tackle room is wide open. So a guy like Kurt Hinish, who was on the squad last year, he's still got to fight for a spot this year as well. So I'm interested to see who the Texans keep on the interior of the defensive line going into this season. Next up, we have the defensive tackle, Kurt Hinish. Let's go along to the defensive end room, and I'm looking at the 7th round pick, Solomon Byrd, out of USC. And I know what you're saying, Jeremy, the Texans drafted him. You really think Solomon Byrd needs to step up? I really do think so, because the Texans, I believe, are only going to keep 4 or 5 edge rushers on this team. And a guy like Solomon Byrd, his spot is not guaranteed. The 2024 7th round pick out of USC, he's been doing okay, but really, if he wants to make this final 53-man, if he wants to make this squad, he's going to have to fight these other guys to do so. Jerry Hughes, Ali Gay, Malik Fisher, Veldarius Payne, who they recently signed the UDFA out of Virginia Tech. All these guys are fighting for a roster spot, because I believe you have Will Anderson, you have Danielle Hunter, and I think Derek Barnett. Those are your 3 edge rushers that are locks to make this team, in my opinion. The other spot, 2 spots, maybe 3 spots are up for grabs between these guys right here. And Solomon Byrd as a 7th round pick, like I said, you're not guaranteed to make this roster. Remember, last year, the Texans drafted Brandon Hill out of Pittsburgh, the guy who got the interception at the end of that Steelers game. He didn't make the final 53-man roster last season. So if you make this team, or if you get drafted, that does not mean you're going to make the final 53. So Solomon Byrd, even though he's a rookie, even though he got drafted by the team, I think he's still got to step up if he wants to make that final 53. And lastly, the last person I think who needs to step up is cornerback Myles Bryant. They signed him from the New England Patriots this offseason, the free agent acquisition. Plays, most of his, game is in the slot. And I think that's a problem for Myles Bryant because, 5'9", 185, he doesn't really have the size to play outside. And the thing that's going to hurt Myles Bryant is that the Texans are utilizing Jalen Petrie more and more in that slot position, inside the box. So a guy like Myles Bryant, will he have a spot on this team? I mean, Desmond King also is manning that spot for the nickelback position currently. So if Myles Bryant maybe doesn't, help out on special teams, help out in other ways and really prove that he can help out in this cornerback room, I don't know if he makes the final 53-man roster. It's really a toss-up because you have Derek Stingley, you have Kamari Lassiter, Desmond King. I think they keep maybe Jeff Okudah. And then who's that next spot? Is it a C.J. Henderson? Is it a Myles Bryant? Is it a Ford? Is it a Troy Pride Jr.? I'm not sure. But like I said, he really needs to prove himself in these next 2 games if he wants to be on that final 53. That's all I have for you on today's show, folks. As always, hit me up on Twitter at Jeremy Chuggs for the dankest memes on the internet and more Texans news and rumors coverage. And I made a brand new IG page for the channel. Please go give it a follow. It's brand new. It's my baby. So I'm going to put that link in the comment section and description of today's video as well. It's at Texans Today CS. I'm going to be posting a lot more Texans content on there, all my shorts on there, just more stories, more, funny stuff as well. So if you want all that stuff, all that content around the Houston Texans, go follow the new IG page at Texans Today CS. And as always, go down and hit that sub button, or you're a loser and you don't love the Houston Texans if you're not subscribed. So go down and join the almost 16,000 Texans fans that have subscribed to the channel for free by going down and hitting that sub button.